Hello and Assalamualaikum to Miss Husna. My name is Ameer and today I will be presenting about approximate estimating in construction. So let's start with what approximate estimating actually means. So approximate estimating is a method used to predict the probable cost of a construction project before detailed drawings, specifications or even bill of quantities are ready. And for me, why does approximate estimating is really important, is really matter, because at the very early stage of a project, the client needs to know roughly how much the project will cost before they even commit to paying design fees, and that's why approximate estimating gives that early figure. It is also the basis for setting a budget or cost limit, and it allows comparison between different designs options, and it helps the client with things like applying for a loan or allocating funds. So next is purpose of approximate estimating. So specifically, what's the purpose of doing this at the early stage? So first, it gives the client an early indication of whether the project is even affordable. Second, it helps the architect and quantity surveyors or QS check for the cost as the design develops, so they don't waste time designing something that the client can't afford. This is called avoiding abortive design work. Third is it allows the design team to compare alternative schemes, for example choosing between a steel frame or a concrete frame structure. Fourth, it sets a cost target that the whole design team has to work within, and finally it forms the basis of the initial cost plan that gets submitted to the client. So next is the overview of type of method that commonly used in approximate estimating. So first is the cubic method, and next unit method. There is also floor area method, and last story enclosure method. So I'm gonna explain detail for each method. So the first one is unit method. So this works by taking the cost of one functional unit of a building. For example, cost per bed in a hospital, cost per seat in a hall, or cost per shop unit, and multiplying it by the numbers of unit. So this method is suitable for buildings that are standardized or repetitive, like schools, hospitals, and shop lots, where a clear functional unit exists. And work example that I can give is if the cost per shop unit, if the cost per shop office unit based on a similar completed project is 220,000 ringgit, and our project has 4 units, then the estimated cost is 4 times 220,000, which equals to 880,000 ringgit. So the second method is the floor area method. So this is the most commonly used approach, and here we take the gross floor area, or we call it as GFA, of the building and multiply it by a cost rate per meter square. And this method is suitable especially at the early design stage when only floor plans are available, which is exactly our situation for this project or for this assignment. So for example, the GFA is 400 square meter and the rate is 1,300 ringgit per square meter. So the estimated cost is 400 times 1,300 ringgit equals to 520,000 ringgit. So next is the cubic method, or we call it as cube method. It's basically the same. So anyways, how it works, instead of using floor area, we use the volume of the building, which is length times width times with height, and multiplied by a rate per cubic meter. So this method is more suitable for buildings with unusual or significant story height, such as warehouse or halls. So for example, if the building footprint is roughly 21.9 meters by 8.1 meters, giving about 177 square meters, and the height is about 7.2 meters, the volume comes to around 1274 cubic meters, and at a rate of 450 ringgit per cubic meter, the estimated cost is about 573,000 ringgit. So the fourth method is the story enclosure method. So this is a more refined version of the cubic method. It recognizes that different buildings element cost differently, so it applies different weightings to the ground floor, upper floor, walls and roof before multiplying by a rate. So this method suits for multi-story buildings where we want more accuracy than the simple cubic method gives us. For example, the ground floor area of 200 square meters is weighted by 2, giving it 400, and the first floor of 200 square meter is weighted by 1.5, giving 230. The wall area of about 315 square meter and the roof area of about 177 square meter are both weighted by 1. Adding these together gives a total weight area of 1,122 at a rate of 500 ringgit per weighted square meter, and the estimate cost comes to around 561,000 ringgit Malaysia. Now, comparing all four methods, each has its own strengths and weaknesses. So the unit method is very quick and works well for repetitive buildings, but it's only accurate if a truly comparable building exists. The floor area method is simple and the most widely used, but it ignores things like story height and building shape. The third one is the cubic method, accounts for volume and height, but it's rarely used today because rate data is hard to find. And last, the story enclosure method is the most accurate of the four since it reflects how cost varies vertically, but it's more complex and needs more design information to calculate. And now let's move to applying this to our given project, which is the scenario is a 4 units 2-story shop office building located at lot 60714 to 60717 Gertak 100 Kuala Besut, Terengganu. So the ground floor is used as shop area and the first floor is used as office area with 4 units of each level. And for this project, I choose the floor area method because we only have the architectural floor plans available and no detailed working drawings or bill of quantity, which makes this the most appropriate and practical method to use. So at this slide is the full calculation that I just did. So the first step is I calculated the gross floor area or GFA from the floor plan, which each shop office unit has a footprint of about 6.096 meters by 8.2 meters, which comes to roughly 50 square meters, with 4 units on the ground floor, that's 200 square meters, and another 200 square meters on the first floor, giving us a total GFA of 400 square meters. Next, I applied a cost rate based on the RCADIS and JUBM construction cost handbook, and average standard commercial rate is around 1,300 ringgit per square meter. And since this project is located in a rural area in Terengganu rather than in Kuala Lumpur, I adjusted the rate down slightly to 1,200 ringgit per square meter to reflect lower labour costs in the area. And finally, I multiply the GFA of 400 square meter by the rate of 1,200 ringgit per square meter. That gives us an estimated project cost of 480,000 ringgit. So to conclude my presentation, the floor area method gives us a quick early stage estimate based only on the floor plans available, arriving at an estimated cost of 480,000 ringgit for this 4-unit shop office building. It's a useful method for setting an initial budget, but as we've seen, its accuracy is limited and it should be refined once a detail of bill of quantities is prepared. And in terms of recommendation, cost rates should be updated regularly using indices from JKR or CIDB. It's also good practice to cross-check the estimate using a second method, such as the story enclosure method, as a sanity check. And then a contingency of around 10 to 15% should be added to account for design changes and inflation. And ideally, a quantity surveyor or QS should be engaged early so that so the estimate can be refined as the design develops. That's all from me. Thank you.